everyone. My name is Chris from HC Media, and I'm here with another episode of Stay at Home Studio. Today, my guest is another HC Media volunteer who's also the founder of Alpha E Consulting. You know her from Haverhill's Heart of Business and Love Talks. I am with Eva Montibello. Thank you for being here, Eva.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
You are very active at HC Media, and part of that came from your passion for, being in the community and being just around people and telling other people's stories. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where that passion came from and how you ended up at HC Media.
I've always loved communications and politics. I'm a Montebello, so we're well known for like talking politics all the time. So I think the communications just came to me naturally. But also, ever since I was little, I also was a volunteer. I've been volunteering since I was about 7 years old and have done it my whole life and have lots of energy. So I spend a lot of my time doing volunteer projects just because they feed my soul. And someone had just taken your class at HC Media, your 2-week Wednesday night, 2-hour class, and they saw me at a Winning Opportunities for Women conference meeting. And they were like, you have to go take this class at HC Media. It is perfect for you and you will love it. And it was Donna Spencer Collins. You know her?
I do.
Yeah.
Donna's great.
She basically, I don't know what the opposite of bullying is, but she basically like up and empowered me. And she's like, you go sign yourself up. And I was like, okay, and there are certain people that tell you what to do and you're like all over it. And she's one of those people for me. So, I signed up for the class and then I volunteered in studio for a while. And then one day I was like, I want to have my own show. And that's how Love Talks showed up. So that's
Yeah.
my path to HC Media.
That's fantastic. And obviously you now are there regularly and you have a lot of great guests. So I know I speak for everybody on staff, and thank you for continuing to volunteer and do all that you do.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
for being a great resource for the community. Like the work that you guys do is so important I'm going back, I'm a Montebello, so I'm always going to go back to politics from the political coverage to the community coverage and the school department. You guys really do have the pulse of Haverhill like right under your fingertips. So thank you for what you guys do.
well, thank you for your compliments. We definitely try, and so it means a lot to hear that from you. I think that we're obviously doing this remotely because of this outbreak of the coronavirus, and everybody's talking about it. And, I'm working from home. You're obviously probably working from home as well on your various things. Talk a little bit about how, let's maybe stick with this theme of community. Talk a little bit about how you have seen the virus affect the community, but maybe in a positive way. What are some things you've seen in your different circles that has come out of this from like a silver lining standpoint?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of it's funny, like nonprofits as well as people that do nonprofit work that are may or may not be affiliated with a nonprofit, but they just do community work in their own kind of way. That have always been a little bit under the radar. Merrimack Valley Hope Mission and Joe Demore. He's a guy that does tons of stuff in the community and really is like the best kept secret of Haverhill. He has his meals that he gives out every week that's now transitioned because of the 6 feet distancing, as well as like the dangerousness in handing food out and providing food to others and having food come from people's homes, even though there are guidelines. Um, but I was talking to Bill LaPierre from the Sacred Heart Pantry, and one of the things that he was saying was, it's unbelievable about the people of Haverhill. He was like, it moved, and he actually said this. He said it moves him to tears to see the people showing up on Tuesdays and Thursdays to drop off all kinds of foods and diapers. I'm running a diaper drive, and we only started on Monday, and they've already gotten 15 big packages of diapers. So, he literally was like, the people of Haverhill are amazing. The people that are volunteering are literally doing, it's Sacred Hearts Parish, so they are literally doing God's work, literally in God's home. But the other interesting thing that he said is traditionally a lot of the volunteers at Sacred Hearts are people that are seniors or a little bit older that are now in the high risk category. But with all of the college students coming home and doing their online learning and having school not be where Amherst or New Hampshire or wherever it is, and they're hanging out at home doing their schoolwork online when they feel like it. It seems as though the family members that have seniors, communicate amongst the whole family, and these college students are going into Sacred Heart's pantry to help out. So it's interesting how when we're trying to protect one group of seniors, that other groups step up. And one of the other things that he said is, people will drive right from Market Basket on Tuesday and Thursday and come right to the pantry and do drop offs. So it's really unbelievable. And I've always said this about Haverhill is like, we are just a different type of people, where, the ones that give to the community give big and give hard and, love hard. So it's really nice to kind of see that be fulfilled ongoingly, particularly around this crisis.
That's good news. And I think it's one of those things where I'm trying to pry at the positive stories around, because we've all heard the bad ones, and
Right.
there's definitely no shortage of danger out there. Like, we definitely don't want to sugarcoat any of this, but we have to also cling to hope and look forward, and talk about the things that are going to uplift us and encourage us to keep us moving forward when we're stuck isolated at home. So thank you
Right.
for sharing that. So talk about the diaper drive a little bit, because I mean, I heard about it through the grapevine. Why a diaper drive? I mean, I obviously can think of why, but maybe just talk about where that idea came from and what you've seen come out of it so far in just under a week.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think on like Saturday night at like 9, I got a Facebook message and they're like, not like you have enough to do, but hey, how about a diaper drive? And I'm like, absolutely for you, So I was like, give me the phone number. So, an email. So I sent an email out to Sacred Hearts. And, so, so the, so obviously pantries work with low income or financially insecure people that still need the same type of things. But now, the number of people that are financially insecure has gone up significantly. On a regular basis, 42% of people live paycheck to paycheck. And then just recently, I also heard a secondary statistic that more than 50% of children in Haverhill are food insecure. So between those two statistics, and then people are getting laid off, and there's that gap of 1 or 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks where unemployment kicks in. And then there are the folks like the restaurant workers or the minimum wage folks that I don't know what the percentage is, if it's like 65 or 75% of their typical pay. They're already not making enough money to make ends meet, and then now they are going to have a 3-week gap in income. So that's really where we're looking at trying to support that gap. And diapers are just kind of people that buy food are one type of people, but I think it's a different kind of maybe a little bit of a demographic that buys diapers. A lot of the people that have reached out to me, I haven't, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. So, every single person that's reached out to me about diapers has been a mom, so we know what it's like to, you know, deal with your child with a messy diaper. It's something that when you hear diaper drive as a mom, you like viscerally know how that feels. Every single mom, I'm pretty sure every single mom has been somewhere and there's been like a diaper explosion and you've been stuck. And unfortunately, that's the type of like world that we're grappling with some of these lower income people, is they're trying to make diapers last longer because they have fewer. But I don't know about you, Chris, but I would not want to sit in a soggy diaper. I think
No, definitely not.
that's really where people go. So to this point, and like I said, it's only been like not even a week. They've gotten like 15 huge things of diapers, and I know that they're still coming in. People are still inboxing me. So I had and it's interesting. The other really curious thing about Haverhill is nonprofits and the government. The nonprofit government agencies donate to each other. Even as like staff members. Ozzy's kids, Christina Hardy brought over a big bag of diapers, as well as Renee McGuire from the YW. So, it's crazy how like I think all these nonprofit people, they're like, oh look, we have supplies that we don't need, so let us give them to you. Really interesting how that works.
And it's one of those things where the community really has to come together, because there is such a financial burden across the globe but especially in our communities, that's the only place we can really have an impact because that's where we are. And you mentioned every mom knows what it's like to have a baby and have the struggle of the baby, needing diapers, but also stack on top of that that all kids are now home from school, and those moms, maybe some of those single moms or those single parents out there, are having to juggle a baby and three other kids that are trying to do remote learning.
Right.
So, what's it been like for you? I mean, you're a mom. Are your kids doing remote learning right now?
You know what? He is. It's painful, and I think he's having a hard time converting. He's when he has homework, it's homework after the schoolwork. And now he still continues to relate to any work done at home as homework. But now, we're basically required to do 3 hours a day. I have to tell you, his teacher has been unbelievable. I think I've gotten an email from her just about, I would say probably 3 to 4 times a week since, school has been let out, and really providing a lot of technical support around getting set up. But, when your kids are home and you want them to do 3 hours of work, there's going to be a transition period. And I'll speak for myself. It's been fairly unpleasant. So, on top of, and here's the other thing, as part of my business and the volunteer work that I'm doing, I'm busy already, and then I'm getting the 3 hours of homework on top of it. So we've,
That was going to be my next question, is like, how do you juggle, and maybe you can talk about this in a second when you're finished your thought. I mean to cut you off, but how do you juggle all the things that you do? And what would you say to someone like yourself, a mom, or that wants to get involved in the community but says, well, I got a family, how would you help them orient into that?
yeah. What I think a lot of it is being organized. Every night I put together my to-do list and I hopefully knock one or two things off of it. But I think the real point is to look at how, is finding something that you're passionate about, finding something that really matters. And if there's something that really matters to you, you'll figure out how to schedule out, a half an hour or an hour. I was just talking to, like, for example, I already had a kind of full day planned, and Chris from Creator Cult is like, I'm looking for this one thing for masks. And I'm like, okay, I'm on it, and it didn't even, I kind of took my important emerging stuff that I had to do. I got it done, and then I, worked on a project for him for about, an hour. As a single parent myself, when looking and trying to figure out what additional stuff to take on, in terms of volunteer work, is really find, a project that you're passionate about with people that you really love. I think that that's the key. All of the people that I work with, I absolutely adore them. I love Sacred Hearts. I love Joe DeMore. I love Chris White from Creator Cult. I love everybody from the Chamber. And those are kind of the people that I closely migrate to. But figure out what you want to do, and then try to identify and see who you can relate to most easily, because you don't want to add something that's not fun onto your pile. I definitely have had volunteer gigs where I have suffered through. And now, I just sometimes have to make that call and be like, what, this isn't working for me. You know what I mean? If you're doing it for free and you're adding value, and, you're not having a good time, you really have to like figure out what works for you, so that volunteer work actually fills your cup, your proverbial cup, versus emptying it out. So that's
Yeah.
what I would say to that.
That's wise advice, because people who volunteer, it's very sacrificial, and you end up burning yourself out sometimes if you don't give yourself space and you're not doing something you're passionate about.
Mhm.
Everyone, that's that old saying, if you do something you love, you don't work a day in your life, and I do believe that.
Exactly.
What is something that you would say is your most favorite part about volunteering? Maybe aside from working with what you're passionate about, what are
Yeah.
maybe two or three things that really jump out at you as saying, this is why I love volunteering and continuing to volunteer?
Yeah, I think one of them is, I have a kind of an interesting skill set, given that I work with the media and I work with promotion, and I feel like I'm a pretty decent connector of people. Someone's like, oh, I need this. And I'm like, oh, hold on, I have someone for that. I think that a lot of nonprofits, especially smaller ones or even small businesses, sometimes they just need kind of an outside person to come in and take their message and get it out into the community. And that's really what, I think that I'm good at. But I think that that's what you want to look at, is like, how do you take your passion and then match your skills to it? When I was younger, I used to actually take on volunteer work that I could increase my skills. I used to help with events because I didn't know how to do events. And then all of a sudden I got really good at events, and now as part of my company, I run events. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at, I like to call it's my passionate philanthropy, and whether you're giving money or you're giving something even more valuable like your time, I think you really have to look at that combination of passion and then functionality, and how do the two come together. So, and
Yeah, no,
and I have to tell you, I see people online all the time, and I'm like, hey, I just spoke to someone this morning that I had done a podcast with a while back, and I said, how are you getting your message out to the greater community? It just seems a little crazy that you're not doing that. And she was like, well, and I'm like, are you making any money? And she's like, no. And I'm like, do you need to make money? And she was like, yes. So I was like, let's just get on a free call with me and let me give you some tips. So it's really like that type of work where whether they reach out to you or you reach out to them because you have a skill set that works, either works. But if you feel like you can make a positive, lasting difference in either for another person or for a community, then get out there and do it. Especially if you're kicking around the house. If you can do some of this stuff from home, absolutely take it on and start those relationships. I think the first step is always the hardest, is saying, hey, this is what I do. Are you interested? Because some people are like, nope, we don't need that, and don't be offended by that. Just keep trying. It just wasn't it's like dating. It's not a good match, move on to the next person in your lineup.
yep. I like the joke that says, the first step's always the hardest, so let's just skip right to the second step. Let's go right into the next step. But you're right, and sometimes people just getting in a routine is a huge part of being, productive. And sometimes just that first step of getting into routine. Once you're in the routine, it's part of your day to day operation. You're like, oh, this isn't so bad.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the outbreak for a second, because this is in an instant changed the way we are living across the nation, in our communities, in our homes.
Yeah.
So when you think about volunteerism or community and that kind of thing, where it's really has to do a lot with being physically present,
Yeah.
how do you think that the next several months will change the way volunteerism is, manifested, but also moving into the future for other things that are unexpected that are going to come our way like this? Or if next year we have to isolate again because coronavirus comes around, even if we have a vaccine, how do volunteers adapt to having to stay at home?
Right. I mean, there are definitely like the brick and mortar type companies that no matter what, like if you're a Ruth's House volunteer, kind of there's everything's at a straight halt at this point. But there's a lot of things like if you look at like Creator Cult and what they're doing, one of my friends was like, hey, how can I help? And I was like, can you cut HEPA filters, to a particular thing, size, and we have a template. So the world is really looking at like how can you be creative around your volunteer work. And nowadays, unfortunately, it's more a money game than it is a time game, because the nonprofits, like organizations like Emmaus House, they are, this just hit the news this morning. They're out looking for alternatives for folks that are homeless, whether they be in local hotels that are empty or in local schools that are empty, or looking at the old St. Joseph's. Like their executive director has been on the phone nonstop. So the question is that, after seeing that article, is that the type of, thing where if a developer or a place that houses people temporarily or long term, is that a resource that you could have? Or, could you call her and say, hey, what can I do? Are you going to be doing a donation request, and you need, 1,000 envelopes stuffed? Can we give you all those envelopes and the stamps and have you go and do those? So it's interesting because I think that, I've long said that I don't know why some of these like office buildings are so big, because you do the same job in the office that you would do in your home office if you can close your door away from your kids and your family and your loved ones. So I think that it's really going to be like looking at like what's a new and creative way of doing this stuff. But I think the unfortunate thing is I think one of the positive things about volunteering is really that community and making new friends and being with other people. So, then that's the other question is, if someone's home stuffing envelopes, Does everybody get onto a Skype or a Zoom call or a Google Hangout and run your computer when you're stuffing envelopes? So it's really the question about how can new technology, take that 6 feet and make it like whatever this is, a foot and a half.
Yeah, and we
That's
all better pray we don't lose internet,
yeah,
because
well,
that would be terrible. But you're right. Like, we've had to adapt, and thankfully, I work in a field where I'm in technology. I'm in videography, so I have an at home studio here that I'm using for to still work. And I think a lot of people are finding that you hit the nail on the head. Like, we can do a lot of this stuff from home. We don't need to have this brick and mortar building that costs money to blah blah blah. Like, people can do half their job at home depending on what they do. Obviously, if you're a medical person, you can't. Well, even them, even some doctors are now, I've heard, using phones to like look down someone's throat and test them for strep and things like that. So there's all kinds of things that are changing. In the remaining minutes that we have, why don't you talk a little bit about, you mentioned the diaper drive. Do you have any plans for, or do you know about anything coming down the pike that is community centered, that is going to be there to aid people? Or what are some things you maybe want to try to get off the ground in the next couple weeks?
yeah, I think, honestly, I think given that we're kind of quarantined, I don't know, quarantined, recommended quarantined until May 4th, I think I've got a couple of good things under my belt. And, Bill up here from Sacred Heart said, you know what? Diapers are always going to be in need. So let's just keep working on that. And then the other thing with face masks from Common Ground. So those are the two projects that I'm really, really continuing to work on. And just like every time I go to the market basket, I throw a bag of diapers in my cart. So that's really just the game. And I think that there's actually something really powerful to be said with like sticking with what you're committed to and what's working. I really could take on 10 other projects, but I think that they would probably suffer. So, I'm just going to keep my two or three or four, that are close to my heart, and keep working them through the month of April at least. So I think that's what I'm going to do on my side, and work on some personal projects that I have put aside for a while. So
Good. Yeah, and you're only one person, so you can't do everything. But
you guys get out there and help. And if you need to be connected, feel free to Facebook me, and I will connect you to someone that can give you a project.
awesome, awesome. Well, Eva, thank you so much for your time and for being here and taking time out of your day to talk with us at HC Media about community and staying positive. And I appreciate all that you're doing. I hope that we wrap up this virus soon so we can get back to the studio and do your shows. But thank you again for your time. And yeah, I appreciate that very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
You too. And if anybody is looking to see more of these shows, you can check out haverhillcommunitytv.org, where their shows are always online and also on Haverhill Channel 22. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.